Hello and welcome back to Elliott's podcast. I have something a bit more upbeat for you today. It's kind of ambient techno, but I really don't like the combination of those two words. It sounds very generic, but I've hooked up some gear that I haven't hooked up in a while, and there's actually a very cool combination happening that I can maybe explain after, but in the meantime we'll just play and see how it goes. Okay. Okay, thanks for hanging out here. Not New York, we're not far away either. Up in Toronto, Ontario. All right, I'll cut it with the crappy voices. I had been watching some Seinfeld reruns lately, so the setup that I'm working with right now, I made something when, like, this pandemic has been going on so long that I feel like this was like year one of the pandemic, and I called this the Beast. And it's this is the analog-ish synth, which is the Behringer Model D, which is a copy of an old Moog design. And then I've connected it. I call it like the budget modular synth, and it connects to two Korg machines that are sequencers. One's the Volca sample, which did the beats in this setup that you heard, and then the Korg SQ1 is the sequencer that controls the synth that makes it go bloopy. And I could, now that we're done the track, I try not to. I try not to tweak it too much. I call these sequences some kind of sacred geometry for me, my equivalent. I don't know much about sacred geometry, and people have tattoos of squares on their shoulder, but for me the sequences are the sacred geometry, because they all have some kind of magic to them, and they happen quickly, and I can't really record them easily and then use them later. So whatever they are, and they're kind of it's kind of some kind of Zen thing, because it comes and it goes, and you can't grasp onto it, because as I said, I could record these sequences, and they've shown up in different tracks of mine, but the Korg, this sequencer is very much a dumb sequencer in the traditional sense, where the knobs change, and they and you can screw the pattern up very quickly, and then there's no memory. But Korg did come out with a follow-up piece of gear that stores the sequences, and I don't think I would have fun with something like that. So this was one station, and then I ended up calling it the Beast, because it is a beast. When you, like, on its own, it has the drum beats and that sequencer. So like on its own, it can really pack a punch. And so what I did was I put it on a piece of wood board, and I velcroed them down, so kind of like a pedal board that guitarists use. And so I created this thing, but then it's been kind of collecting dust for a while, because I don't know, I just thought it was too bleepy bloopy or whatever, but I thought it'd be fun to bring it out, because I recently got this other thing on the other side, which is the Tascam Model 12, which is so far, from what I can tell from my use of it, is a dream come true for the center of a studio room, because it's a mixer and a portable a recorder. It's a mixer and a recorder, and it connects to the computer. So like the pad that you're hearing in the background is actually coming from my computer, which you don't see in the video if you're watching the video. And I also had a piano. I have a piano, electric piano, that I recorded earlier. It's about to come on in a second here. I recorded that on the piano behind me, and so I have a computer running through the mixer, and then I have the Beast, and then I have my guitar, this microphone that does this podcast, and then it records everything. It also records all the separated tracks, and a final version that I will be able to pair up with this video. So yeah, that's but overall I spent a lot of time moving away from this kind of setup with the techno and everything, but I'm coming back to it a bit as a way of I'm very interested in how do we make ideas fluid, and how does music become, for lack of better words, an easy process. And I think when you work with computers and you want to do songs that have traditional song structures, it can be very challenging, because those typically work well, I think, with a band. If you want to switch to the chorus, back to the verse, and I think with the computer, if you're using stuff with a computer and you're one person, it's kind of nice to be able to have things running in a loop. And I was listening to Alan Watts' podcast this week, and he did talk about how Indian Sanskrit vision of time, it goes in a clock format, which means it's basically repeating and looping. That's the way, I guess, sort of ancient Indian would think about Indian, in this particular context that he was talking about. They would think about time in a circular form, and he was saying, but whereas the Hebrew method of time was more linear, as if like we're moving towards an end. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy, because if you ever used Ableton Live, there's two views on the screen. One is the a loop grid where everything's moves in circles in what is that called? Clip view. And then the other view is called session view, which is linear, the Hebrew version, and it's linear, like as if you're making traditional music. And the funny thing is, like, you could really, I didn't really plan this, but you could kind of, you could superimpose some kind of meaning onto the two views of Ableton. And they really are two views of making music, because one view for many people can be very challenging, which is the timeline. The Hebrew version is very frustrating, because you have to get all your ideas into this fixed thing, and it's very similar to, I guess, how writers have a lot of issues, like getting novels done. Like they're battling word counts and making things fit and making them make sense. And I definitely struggle with the timeline situation. And then the clip view makes me, and we're thinking about the dials and the Sanskrit going in circles, makes me think about the Indian raga of the tablas. I don't know much about that world, but I understand, like, those concerts go on for very long periods of time. I think it's because their philosophy about music is completely different, in that it's not always about, in some cases, It's not always about like a song structure of like, here's the intro and then we move into the head. It's kind of what I understand to be the most of similar to a jam and free flowing music that can go on in infinity. Now the downside is that this isn't, if someone's not on this wavelength, then they're like, where's the song going? And this podcast has gone over 30 minutes. It was around 30 minutes of me kind of playing and jamming. And so for some people, that's like, they don't want that. They've been conditioned here we go with the analogy again, with the Hebrew method, which was that songs come on for 2-3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then they switch and they go on. And I'm much more interested in the long approach. And I do have tracks on my Spotify and Apple Music accounts that are, I have one called Dynasty that is 15 minutes long, and it doesn't do much, but it's a trance because it's inducing a trance because it's just repeating. It's mostly repeating like a very simple thing, and I don't know, I'm taking much more to that. I think a lot of music that I hear is trying too hard, and I think the real revolution in music is going to be, and is, the revolution is the simplification of music, and not having it be so needy. And I think John Cage blew the door open on that. Now, he did obviously write music that was very like overdone and wacky, and I don't know too much of Cage's music, to be honest with you. But he did do 433, which was just 4 minutes of silence, and that was sort of the point that I'm trying to get at, is that and now silence, the 433 is like a canon in the experimental music world. We're obviously far away from 433 making it to pop radio, where they'll put on a 4 minutes of silence on pop radio. No, we're not there. But yeah, so this setup was more my exploration of the loop and the repetition. So the other thing before I wrap up is the really cool thing about the Tascam with my setup called the Beast is that they will synchronize without the computer. And in the 80s and 90s, it was very common that you could get your gear to synchronize, especially if there was like a recording machine involved. But now it's becoming a lot less common. A lot of gear doesn't come with a lot of ins and outs and that kind of thing. And the Tascam Model 12 mixer, I would say, is a real revolution in that they brought back a simple thing, which is synchronization. And it's just showing you that, and if you're seeing it on the screen, it does have like wood paneling, and so there is sort of this. Tascam is kind of giving a nod to what's old is new again, and a lot of musicians don't want to use, they don't want to be tied to a computer anymore when they work on music. And in this type of setup, I could record stuff with the beat machines and then overdub after with the beat machines again, and it will be in sync from what I've already tested and stuff. I say that because sometimes with a lot of this stuff is the gear will promise to do one thing, and then when you actually do it, it can't really, something slips in timing. So I mean, it's fun to be able to experiment with the gear. It is my passion, but if I wasn't able to apply it to something and use it, then I think it would be kind of sad. And I don't mean to put down people who have too much gear and they don't use it. If you do have that issue, I really do recommend starting a podcast. And even if you're in another area of creativity and art, you could, let's say you do painting, you can maybe have a YouTube channel where you share what you're painting. I think from what I've found, it's been very helpful for me to be on the gun with this, because like I've made music right now for today's episode and this week, whereas when it's time to get my releases ready for Spotify or whatever, it's a lot more it's harder for me to get going because I don't have that exact deadline. So for other people, if you have a podcast or if you have a YouTube channel and it's like a weekly thing has to go out, that it's not like this is lower stakes, and that's why I think I've really hit on to something with this, for me at least. I'm not saying for the world what's the novel thing here, but from what I found, actually, I don't really know of a lot of podcasts where the people are playing music. And for many episodes, I didn't play music on here, and I was sort of just talking about music. And that reminds me, I gotta load up my computer here, because we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of Elliott's podcast, and I put it in my calendar that at the end of the month I will do a live special show. So that's on the 30th of April. Why is that grayed out? Okay, it's on a Saturday. So yes, on the Saturday, April 30th, I will 2022, I will do a live show to celebrate 1 year of Elliott's podcast. I mean, this could have been live right now too. No, I have whatever I'm doing to record this could easily be doing live, but so that will happen on the 30th. And yeah, thank you for listening. And I'll put a link in the show notes. I did release a monthly mix in March of music that was made on this podcast in the winter. We're now moving into spring. So I will share that in the link there. I put on Bandcamp, where you can hear it there, or it's on Patreon. If you sign up by Patreon for $3 a month, you get that as a download, and I actually have it in FLAC format. So yeah, that's sort of how I do the Patreon thing now, and it actually took me at least a month to really get that going. It was kind of tricky to get that, to wrap my head around how do I compile the music from the different shows, but I did it, and I'm ready to do it every month now, so it's exciting. All right, so thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.